So everybody should have access to Emmet, and it's pretty easy to get access to in brackets. In brackets, what we can do is click on the Lego piece, and then you do a search for Emmet, and then you hit install. So that's all you really have to do. While I'm here, though, there's one more thing I want to show you is another tool that you can use called Beautify. And I recommend you using Beautify as well. I have Beautify installed. And let me see something. And Beautify is nice because basically what it will let you do is highlight your code, and then you hit Beautify and it cleans up your code for you. And let me show you Beautify real quick before I get into Emmet. So I have some code here, and what happens with Beautify is that's already kind of clean. Let me find something else that's a little less clean. This might be good. So what happens with Beautify is when you install Beautify, you get a little magic wand. And so if I select on my code and click that magic wand, it basically takes the code and it organizes it nicely on the screen. So it will tab everything out correctly. So let's say I had, with these, classes here, let's say I didn't tab this stuff out. So here's an unordered list with some list items in it. If I click on Beautify, they'll automatically take those list items and tab it over the correct amount, so everything is nice and even. So Beautify is a great tool to use in addition to Emmet. You can go, if you want to go to the webpage for Emmet, you can, and that gives you a download for basically any type of integrated development environment that you're using. So if you're using Atom, which some people are, even Dreamweaver, just about anything out there, CodePen, we'll go through CodePen a little bit, Sublime. So it gives you the downloads right there. So you can, you basically have the ability to use Emmet in just about anything. So it's a very, very universal type tool. So let's go through a couple different things that we can do with it, and just so you understand in more detail a little bit. And I need to, let's see, have two screens side by side. Let me see if I can. Okay, I have to do this. So on one side I'll have code, and on the other side I will show you some of these things with Emmet. So I'm going to create a new web page, new here, and I'm going to save it. And I have a week 7 folder, and I'll give you all this code like I normally do. And we'll call this Emmet practice. So I'll take you through a couple recipes with Emmet. And there's one in particular that I want you to think about when we're working on our project, this project coming up. So the one, to me, one of the most amazing shortcuts with Emmet is the exclamation point. So exclamation point tab, and that gives you your boilerplate right away. So that's a really good shortcut to use immediately. I think I showed you that, but if you forgot it, just hit exclamation point. And if you have Emmet installed, it's going to give you your boilerplate, right away. So I'll throw it in the chat, exclamation point. So a couple other things though. So there's some more shorthand codes to think about with Emmet. So one is the plus sign. So what the plus sign does, it will have code come after each other. So if I go H1 plus P and then hit tab, you're going to get your header H1 and then your P tag, paragraph tag right after each other. So you can you can say h1 plus p plus, another thing you can do is if you hit the period key and you create a class, so let's say I create a class called .info, and hit tab, what the dot will do, it will automatically give that class a div. So I'll do that again so you see it. So what I'm doing is I'm using the plus sign to create a list of elements in order. So they're basically sibling elements from top to bottom. And I'll even go in here and say with a comment, the plus sign will create siblings in the order you specify. So I could go h1 plus p, but this is an additional thing that I'm adding into this formula. It's using the period to signify a class. And if I have that period in front of the class name, it's automatically going to turn that into a div. It's basically looking at this class and saying, oh, that should belong with a tag, and let's just make that tag a div. So that's using the plus symbol to create a sibling relationship. So another shortcut, this is kind of explaining that in more detail, is to use the number sign to create a index, or I'm sorry, an ID. So I can say ID first, and that's going to create a div with an ID of first. Or what you can do is you can say something like h1 number sign, and then type out that ID, and then it will make that h1 have an ID of second. And then the same thing works with the class. If I go p dot third, it's going to create a p tag with the class of third. The greater than sign creates a parent-child relationship. So this is what we're going to use in the navigation part of the little lecture that I'm talking about. If you want to create a quick unordered list, so the li element is always a child of the ul element. So the ul is going to signify the type of list, and the li is going to actually represent the item in that list. So if I say ul greater than symbol li, it's going to create a list element inside an unnumbered list element, like that. It also works with, let's say you have a wrapper. So let's say you want to use a wrapper to wrap, to be a holder for other elements on the page. You can say wrapper greater than, and let's say you have another box inside the wrapper. What this will do, it will create a div with a class of wrapper, and then put, hear myself. How's that? Hold on 1 second. I think somebody is, let me see something here. For some reason, I'm hearing myself. Let's see, Felicia, I'm gonna mute you. I'm gonna see, maybe it's, hello? Let me mute one up as well. Hello? Okay, I think I fixed it. So I'll unmute you, and I don't mean to mute you, but as somebody who had me coming through their speaker. Okay, so what this is going to do right here, where you see dot wrapper greater than symbol dot box, it's going to basically create a box, a div with a class of box inside a div with a class of wrapper. So I hit tab, and now I have this div with the class of box inside this div with the class of wrapper. So that's a nice little trick if you have things within things. You know, you have a hierarchy, you have a parent with children, then use the greater than symbol. And we'll use that again. I'll show you a more extensive example of that. So this example here is basically showing, multiple children. Actually, this is a really good example because a lot of time with lists, we might want to have a series of links and maybe even images in that series of list items. So what this will do is create a list item, which is going to be a link, and that link is actually an image. So it's where you can click on an image and go to somewhere else on the page or a different website. So basically what this does, and let me open it up, it's creating a link that uses an image as the link inside a list item. And we can click on Beautify here.
What does the A stand for?
A is your anchor tag.
Okay.
So A is your anchor tag. A has the href attribute. That's basically where you create a link to go somewhere.
And A designates where it's to go.
Href actually would designate where it's going. So what we can do is, href go to Google, and then here in the image though, you'd want an image, and the image would act as the actual link for this.
Okay.
So if I type Google here, then we just look at the actual web page. There's my link, and it goes to, actually, I should say https //
What's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS?
HTTPS is a secure site.
Okay.
So having that S on there means that that site is secure. It's something that you need to get a certificate for when you create the website. It's just a good security measure for the site itself. So that's what you'll see this HTTPS. Sometimes there's certain web blockers that will basically not let you access a page if it's not secure. So it's just a security measure. There's different software tools that corporations will use to block web pages, to whitelist certain pages if it doesn't have that S at the end of the HTTP. So Google is one of them. I think if I don't include it, let's say here, let me see if it. Yeah, it still works, but Google is a site that has that security set up for that. But yeah, it's just anchor tag is a link. So let's see here. So next, we just actually showed that sibling relationship. I'm going to skip over Bootstrap and Jumbotron here. So this is the one I want to get into though, this nav. So there's a lot of interesting things happening here, and let me tell you what's going on with this. So we have the greater than symbol. So the greater than symbol is creating that parent-child relationship, but we also have a multiplier. And what the multiplier does, it will create multiple items. So let me show you the multiplier by itself first. If I say something like P times 5, it's going to create 5 P tags. So you can also say P lorem times 5. Actually, I have to P plus or P greater than lorem, and it creates 5 here's creating 5 span tags, and the lorem is generating this generic lorem ipsum text. But basically, the multiplier lets you create multiple elements based on the number that you choose. So another way to use it is with a list. So I can say UL, and then I would say greater than LI, because the LI is going to be an item in the list, and then I add my multiplier, and now I have this list with this unnumbered list with 4 list items. I can also say something like I can also do this. I can say UL let's see, LI, and then I can give it a, inside the LI, what I can do is add content. So I can say something like pets, and then add the multiplier here. And what that does is it gives me a list, but it gives me content inside the list. And then the other thing I can do is at the end of pets, I can add a $sign. And what that will do is actually number that out. So now I hit tab, and it says pets 1, pets 2, pets 3, and pets 4. So if I was creating a nav bar, what I could do is say something like this, UL, and we'll get into more detail on this, greater than, and say LI, and then inside my curly braces, I can say gallery, let's say, add the number sign, and then do times 4. And now I have 4 gallery listings here. So this is, this is basically what it looks like. So it's a quick way to generate this bullet point list with 1 line of code using Emmet. So to go a little deeper into this, let's say I wanted to create a list of links. So what I could do is say something like UL greater than LI, and then I'll have the times 4 here for the LI. But let's say I want to have 4 links vertically on the page. Then I can do that A tag again. So the A tag again is the link. And then for that link, I can adjust the attribute. So for the attribute, what you can do is to add an attribute using Emmet, you use your square brackets. So I can say href equals, and then inside here, basically what this will do is create 4 links to Google. You would never do that, but it's just going to show you how it can be done. So inside that href is the attribute for that href. You have the link to Google. And then I can actually, inside of that as well, add the text for the link, and then $sign again. And then if I hit tab, let me stretch it out a little bit. Now I have a list with 4 links to going to Google. So if I save this and we look at it, now I have my 4 links right here in that list. Really they would be different links, of course. But this is the beginning of what could be a nav bar. This is how we can start to create a nav bar for a multi-page website. And I'll go through this in more detail. Yeah, now you don't necessarily have to use Emmet, but Emmet is just a quick little way to provide shorthand. What I like to do sometimes with some of these little shorthand codes is copy them and put them inside a comment. And I have more examples that I'll post after the class, and then when I have it all set there, I can always cut and paste it and reuse it. Because it's going to be hard to remember all of these formulas as they are, but you know, as you get used to it, you'll figure out ways to do things quickly. So
I've been looking online at different classes, because like if I forget a notation or something, I try and go online and find something that will quickly show me what it is. But one of the things I've noticed is that they normally keep CSS on a separate page as a separate doc. It's a separate HTML doc.
Oh yeah.
In the same file. And I'm starting to use it because when we're doing it like this, I have a hard time differentiating where the CSS goes and where the HTML goes.
Yeah, yeah, and that's you can do that. You know, you could have you can point to the CSS in your head tag,
mm-hmm.
and you're basically creating an external style sheet,
right?
And that can be helpful. You know, you can have CSS in the style tag. You can have it as an external style sheet, and you can also have it within the actual, you can use a style attribute down here as well. So you can do it multiple ways. So it's really, what works best for the project that you're working on.
Okay.
So, an example of, what you're doing is you're saying something like, up here you're saying link, and then you're saying, you're pointing basically to an H reference for that style sheet. And you'd say for this rel attribute, you'd use style sheet, and then you would say href, and that would point to that location where that style is.
Right.
It might be on the same level as the index. So you can do it like that, but you can also do it like this. So we've been doing it like this, where the style tag is in the head tag. So that's another way to do it. Or you can do what's called inline. So an inline example is something like this. You can say, let's say, so here I have the text that says inline example, and then you can create a style attribute, and then add your class or add your property directly in here.
And that will directly affect that particular area that I'm working on.
Yeah, so that's adding your style in the body of the HTML.
Okay.
That's called an inline style.
Okay.
And what will happen too is you can also have, if you go up into the style tag that we have in the head tag,
mm-hmm.
you could specify a style in here as well. So maybe up here I say color is red, but nothing happens because this inline over here overrides the style tag.
Okay.
So if I get rid of this style tag, and hit save. Now it's red because I got rid of the overriding style, the inline style for the P tag.
So if I want to do something in the body that's going to be, that I want to stand out, I can do an inline tag in there, and it won't change the overall style, but it will change it for that particular paragraph.
Correct. Yeah. Let's say you do have to change something in the body of the HTML that's very specific, and it's just this one circumstance where you do have to have that P tag be red, even though all your other P tags have a different style. Then you can use an inline style just to affect that one P tag.
Okay.
So that's one way to do it. And the same thing applies to the style tag, the internal. This is called an internal style sheet versus the external style sheet that you use with the link tag. So this internal style sheet will override the external style sheet as well. So there's an order of precedence of what overrides what. Okay. So if you had an external style sheet, the external style sheet is great for like a multi-page website where you have 5 web pages and you don't want to repeat that style again and again and again within the actual HTML. So if you have a style sheet that affects 5 separate web pages, then the external style sheet is great because you change the external style sheet once and it changes everything. So that's a great way to use an external style sheet. For the internal style sheet though, let's say you have an external style sheet, it's the same way, as I was mentioning with the inline style sheet, this internal style sheet will override the external style sheet too. So it's kind of allowing you to be, gives you a level of specificity for changing something more directly if you need to. So those are the different ways of doing it. Okay. There's these different ways of doing things. So let me go back to this now. So basically what I did was I used this code to create this list with the links inside of it. And let's see what I have here in the presentation. So I'll do it again. What this one has set up though, for this Emmet code here, is basically doing the same thing that it did above, but it's also giving the list a class of nav, the UL a class of nav, and the link a class of nav link. So if I hit tab here, it's pretty much the same that I was doing above, but now I'm applying classes to my list items and my tags. So same situation, but I'm adding the class there. So here, let's see. Okay, I'm not gonna. So basically the idea is the multiplier lets you create multiple items. So this example will create in one header with 3 links, and then there'll be an image inside each link. So that's what that one did. Let's see. So just remember that the multiply symbol lets you create multiple elements. You can, parentheses lets you help organize multiple elements. So if I had something like this, here I'm going to have a unnumbered list with a class of list, and inside that I'm going to add some. Let's see if I want to do this. Oh, sorry, I'm going to do. And then I have my list item with a class of list item, and I want to have basically 2 separate lists. So what you can do is you can use parentheses. So I have my 2 lists here. I have one list with 2 list items, and then if I want to have 2 separate lists with 2 list items, that's going to create the parentheses the way it's set up, it's going to have 2 lists, and each of those lists would have 2 items. So if I hit tab there, I get something like that. So the parentheses lets you organize, and the caret symbol lets you go up a level. So if I say P, the caret symbol is with the, on your keyboard, it's above the 6. P caret symbol H1. Let me do it with like multiples, H1. One H2. So it's basically creating a sibling relationship as well.
Can I see what that looks like on the website?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's better to do something like this. P, if you use the keyword lorem and you put that in brackets, and then I say caret, I'll do H1 lorem, caret symbol P, brackets, and then I'll say lorem again. I think you can add a number here to shorten it. So now if I hit tab, it's an A1 with text in it here. So I'm gonna hit save, and you'll see it on the website here. So you have your H1, and then you have your text. Like that. Let's see. So let me go through a couple more concepts here. So another concept is using the number sign, and you can use the number sign different ways. So the number sign basically will let you number elements. So let me just cut and paste this. Oops. So in this example, I'm going to have 9 links. And this is something interesting that we'll get into as well. This is pointing to a website called placehold.it, placehold it. And then the number in here is basically giving me a size for a box. So this might be a little confusing at first. But here in this alt placeholder folder number sign, it's going to give each box a number. So if you hit tab on this, I have basically 9 links, and each one of those links has a box in it, and those boxes have numbers here. So if you look at this, and I gotta make this a little bit smaller. This is what it created, and each one of these now is basically a link. So the designation here should probably a better example of this would be to actually get rid of that, and then with the href, I can say in curly braces, photo $. And then basically what that does is it gives me the actual link for the text, and it's going to have a box next to it. So now if you look at it, I have photo 1, photo 2, photo 3, photo 4, photo 5. or you can look at it like this as well. So the $ is basically adding a number and letting me iterate through a series of numbers, beginning at the beginning from 1 to the number that I have as the multiplier. So here, if I have photo $ and I have that multiplier, it's going to create a list 1 through 9. The number of $ kind of signify the what's called padding. So if I have 2 $, it's going to start. Oops, it's going to start at 0, 1. So if I hit tab here,
with digits.
Are digits actually? The way to see this is to let me go up to like 12 here. And then it's not doing what I thought it would do. Yeah, I thought it would start at 0, 0, 1. So I have to look into that. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why it wasn't working before. So now it starts at 0, 1. So yeah, now it's working. Yeah, so photo 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. So that's using padding. You know, if I have $3, it will start at 0, 0, 1. And then you can also start at a certain number. So let's say you want to start at the number 5. You can use the @ symbol and then designate that number, and then hit tab, and now it starts at 5. Yeah, so that's using the $. Another good thing to do is to use Emmet for creating comments. So I was trying this. It wasn't working the last time I did it. So if I hit, oh, there you go. So what you can do is if you want to quickly add commenting to your HTML, you use the keyboard shortcut Control / on a PC, and I think it's Command / on a Mac. So if I hit Control, oh, and let me do this too so you can actually see the shortcut here. So if I hit Control / and then that's all I have to do, then I can create a comment really quickly. So Control plus / allows you to quickly create comments. So that's very, very helpful for just quickly creating comments. Control / and if you do it inside of the style sheet, it creates the appropriate comment for a style tag as well. So the / is what you want in the style sheet. And what's nice about it is if you are, I think, if you need to like quickly comment out something, if you have the cursor before that style you want to comment out, it's good for troubleshooting. Hit the Control / and then it will wrap the commenting around that style. Same way with the HTML. If you want to comment out some HTML, you can do it like that. It's a good way to troubleshoot. If you're going, if you're finding something that's wrong with the code, is to a way to do it is to comment things out, and you can use that Control / / And let's see what else. So you can also use Emmet for your styles. So there's all sorts of shorthand codes for width and height and background. If I say W100 tab, it creates a width of 100 pixels. If I say BD plus, it automatically creates a border when I hit return. So you'll have to go to the cheat sheet. There's a cheat sheet website, and it's in this presentation that I'll send you guys. And this lists out all the different types of codes that you can use. If you go to the bottom focuses more on CSS, and there's just like a ton of codes that you can use to quickly get what you want. Another one that I like to use too is BG plus, which automatically gives something a black background. So I can say, you know, BG plus, and actually it's a white background, which really does nothing, but I can then change that if I want by hitting Control E in Emmet or in brackets to quickly change the background. So you have all these shorthand codes. The HTML codes too have some good ones. It goes up to the top to list the ones for creating these different lists. So the different ordered lists. Let me see. So here are examples of grouping. This is showing you.
Go to Wix.com. I know what you're thinking.
Oh, what was that? So yeah, so there's some great little shorthand codes here as well to quickly you know, create something for that web page you're working on. So let's see here. And real quick, let me show you this too for gradients. So you can quickly create gradients for your designs. And the code for this is first creating your background. So you hit BGA. And then you can create a gradient. You can say something like LG. So this creates the gradient. Left is the direction. Color. I think actually you have to hit LG first, tab. Let me see. Let me see if I have this left, red, blue. Oh, there you go. So if I say LG left, red, blue, hit tab, it gives me the code to actually create a gradient in my background. And I don't think you'll see it with the P tag. I'll have to give the P tag a height. You don't really see it. I see it here happening, but I don't see it. Oh, because I have already a color set up. So let me get rid of. So this should give me a gradient. There you go. Instead of background attachment, just use background. So here I get a gradient. So that's using background and then that shorthand LG, left, red, blue. You can also change where the gradient is coming from. So if I want to do something from top to bottom, I'll copy this. So LG top, the gradient will start at the top. It's starting at the top, but this 80% is an angle. You know, I can change the angle. I can say 20. Let me take it out completely, actually. Oh, and I'm saying top left. So it's coming from the top and going to the left. If I just say top, here, top to bottom. There you go. So top to bottom, and then the 80% is changing the amount. So if I say red 10, that's the amount of the gradient. So this is actually a way to quickly create a gradient by specifying LG. That's the shorthand for the gradient. Top left is the direction, you know, coming from the top left corner, the amount, and the colors. So that's shorthand for a gradient, which is really helpful if you want to use gradients because they are a little bit long to type. And yeah, so I just kind of want to go through Emmet, but the one thing I want to go through Emmet for is making these lists. So the lists are important for navigation. So let me kind of go through how to make a nav bar. So the idea with a nav bar is to have something going across the page where you can select. So let me show you an example of a nav bar. And I want you to create nav bars for your next assignment. So the nav bar basically starts as a list, but you see how it's going across. So it's the typical format that you see in most websites. But the way that you create this is you actually begin with an unnumbered list, and then you take that unnumbered list, and it's a list of links, and you basically apply the style sheet to get rid of the bullet, to get rid of the underline, and to make the vertical list go horizontal. So I have it step by step. This is the actual code to do it, but let me actually take you through it step by step so you kind of understand the process. So I have this presentation now, and this is where Emmet again comes in handy. So this is the final version, this code that you see here. But let's begin with a new web page. So we'll start from the very beginning, and I'll show you how to do this from the very first steps. So I'm going to create a folder here, and we'll call this Horizontal Nav Bar. Oops, let's see. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Okay. All right, I'm going to have to save this again. Save as. Okay, so I'm going to create a horizontal nav bar, and I'm going to go through the steps. And all the steps are in this presentation, so it's kind of breaking it down in the simplest way possible for you. So does everybody see this good? So first I'm going to create my boilerplate. I'm just going to use that Emmet shortcut of exclamation point again. So really quickly, I have my boilerplate. So the first step for the nav bar is to create a set of links. So your links are going to be where the navigation is going to take your viewer. So creating the links is the first step. So here, I'll go back into this. Basically, I have 4 A tags. So I can type these out if I want, or I can use the Emmet shorthand again. So the fast way to do this with Emmet is to hit A, then say in my href is going to be my attribute. So in the square brackets, I can say href, and that's going to equal my link. What you can do is just say href number sign. So it's not going to go anywhere, but it's still going to be usable. And then in my curly braces, I can say, let's say page, and then I can give it a number sign. So it's going to number these pages, and then I'm going to multiply it, and that's going to give me the number of links. So now I have, when I hit enter, 4 pages. If I want to have a nav bar with more information, I would just change that multiplier. So let's say I have 8 links. So now I'm in a tab. Now I have page 1 through 8, and I have 8 links. So that's the first step, is to have your links set up. But really, and what I'm going to do too is I'm going to just take this presentation and I'm going to throw it into the chat, so you have access to the presentation. Oh, Dustin's asking a question. Do you find it light mode preferable to dark? I usually work in light mode, so I don't think it depends. It depends on what you like. Okay, so here, the first step to create our nav bar is to have a series of links. But what we really want to do is put those links in a list. So what we really want is a list. So lists are basically good ways to organize. So if you want to organize a series of things, lists are very helpful. And a nav bar is essentially that. It's a list of links. So I'm going to create that list of links. Now here's an example of what that list should kind of look like. So you have your unnumbered list, which is going to give you bullet points for the list items. And that's basically set up, like this. UL for your unnumbered list. And then you have your first list item. And then you have inside the list item, the actual link. And that's your A tag. And here I'm just going to use the number symbol because we're not really going anywhere yet. And then, I'll have my page 1, page 2, page 3. I can cut and paste this. Then go back and change the page numbers like that. And this is basically what you want. You just want a list. The faster way to do it, though, is with Emmet. So the Emmet shorthand for this would be UL, my unnumbered list, and then I have a list item within that. And then that list item is going to appear a number of times, let's say 4 times. And then inside the list item, I'm going to have my A tag, and then my A tag my A tags, I'm going to set the href just to number sign for now. And then I will give each A tag a name of page, and that will be numbered. So I get something like this. So I have list item 1, page 1, list item 2, page 2, list item 3, page 3. It's the same thing that I just did, but this time I did it with Emmet, and I did it all with one line of code. So here are my same thing. It's the same thing I had before. It's just this way. It's just faster. So what I'll do here is I'll basically take that and I'll throw it inside this comment. So if you need to reuse that, you can. So this is the beginning of the navigation, is this list. But basically what you do now is you take these bulleted number list items and you basically just get rid of the bullet, you get rid of the underline, and you change the stacking order, the vertical to horizontal. So that's.
So how did you change it from vertical to horizontal again?
I haven't done it yet, so I'll show you in a few seconds. Actually, the one last thing I want to do is have a wrapper for all of this. So we can use a semantic tag called nav. So there's a special tag that's meant just for nav bars, and it's the nav tag. So what you would do is use that as the wrapper for all of this. So in addition to this line, I can add a nav, and then inside that nav, add the list. So the next step I'm going to show you is going to be what you're asking, Felicia, is how do we get rid of the bullet point and how do we get rid of the underline? So basically what we're doing is creating a style sheet that's going to remove the styling that we created. So I'm going to create another style tag. And then inside that style tag, I'm going to change the bolted list. So what you can do is you can say, I have the UL is the child of the nav. So that's the formatting we can use, nav space UL. And then we can use a property called list style. And if I set list style to none, and then let me bring my web page up here. So if I say list style none, I hit save, it gets rid of the bullet point. So that's the first step. You get rid of the bullet point. So the next step is to take everything that's vertical. So right now, the list is vertical. We want to make it go across the top. We want to make it horizontal. So that's going to be the next step. So to do that, I'm going to use a property called display, and I'm going to set it to inline block. What inline block is basically doing is taking something that's set as a block level element and making it inline. So if I go into my style tag, and this time I'm affecting the list item, which is the child of the unnumbered list. And I say display inline block.